So my video showed that New Testament is full.
Did you have any proof that the New Testament is pagan? Make one claim about the New Testament and back it up with evidence. Because until you do so, I do not believe it for 1 minute. Secondly, you're doing what Rabbi Tovia Singer does, and you speak in a fallacious manner. Do you know what a no true Scotsman is? Yeah. So basically, people like him say, well, if you truly know the Tanakh, you'd realize there's no second coming, because a second coming means that the religion is false. Therefore, if someone claims to believe in a second coming, that means that they don't understand the Tanakh. Now, I'm willing to interact with anybody, anti missionaries, people who deny the Messiah. I find it funny that a lot of Unitarians use this guy's information, even though he's totally adversarial to the New Testament in its entirety. And I'm also willing to speak with Muslims. I just had someone from the House of Ishmael reach out to me recently to ask if he wanted to do a live where we would talk about religious matters, to which I said, of course. You may be asking why I did this. Well, in Matityahu, or Matthew chapter 22, verses 36 through 40, we see a teacher in the law asking Yeshua, Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? And by the way, Christians read this as if he's asking which is the only commandment in the law, or which are the only two commandments in the law. Because Yeshua's response is not saying that there are only two commandments in Torah, or that Christians are obligated to keep today. Verse 37, Yeshua replied, Love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the Torah and the prophets hang on these two commandments, meaning the only way to truly execute these two commandments is if you refer back to the law of God. One way I am executing this commandment is by keeping and building bridges and creating relationships with people I don't necessarily agree with. And that includes those in Protestant Christianity, as I mentioned previously, who are a modern day development of the house of Esav or Esau. Now, what does it say in the law of Moses? Do not despise Edom, for he is your brother. I'm not supposed to despise or hate Edom in my heart. I'm supposed to love Esau enough so that when he desires to learn more about the scriptures, I'm an open book with him. Now, interestingly enough, as Luke is performing an interpretation on Joel chapter 2, he identifies the events of Acts as ushering in the last days. The reason this is interesting is because I've been hearing from a lot of brothers and sisters, either in Minnesota or somewhere in the Midwest, about how they're having these weird dreams lately, about how they're unable to sleep. They're experiencing sleep paralysis, likely because of the changing geomagnetic activity that's going on in those areas. Have you seen the northern lights in the sky? Now, what's interesting is this prompted me to look up a question on the internet. Has geomagnetic activity been decreasing over the last several years? Now, this yielded a result that says that the Earth's magnetic field strength has been steadily decreasing over the last couple of centuries, though this is part of a much longer term cycle. And there are some sources that say since up to 2,000 years ago, which is really interesting because this is the time marker for the book of Acts. Well, in Joel chapter 2, we read that young men will dream dreams, that daughters shall prophesy. Okay, so what does this mean? Could Elohim be using the changing magnetic fields to enable people to see visions and dreams that pertain to him and what he wants to reveal to them? Well, brothers, I don't know if you're pursuing graduate school or maybe you're taking upper division courses or maybe you're all about education, maybe you want a PhD. This is a subject you could write a thesis about or a dissertation about. whether there's a relationship between the prophecy of Joel chapter 2 being fulfilled and the changing geomagnetic field or geomagnetic activity on the earth. It says the overall strength of Earth's magnetic field has been steadily decreasing since at least 1840 at a rate of about 5 to 7% per century. Could this be why more people are yielding dreams? I had a weird dream a couple years ago where I was being pursued by the authorities for refusing to accept a monolithic system of worship, which led me to, for example, not having battery on my phone, running to escape the authorities rather than having a vehicle to do it with, being put into a dilemma where it was either give up my life and thus gain life, or retain my life and thus lose it. Again, I'm not lying when I'm saying that you can write a 200-page paper on this if you wanted to. The National Institutes of Health, and maybe there were other groups, they ran a case study, at least one of them, that analyzed dreams over 6.5 years and found that dreams were significantly more bizarre during periods of low geomagnetic activity than during high activity. So, brothers and sisters, just to put it out there, I get questions on the extra biblical text all the time, to which people say to my answers, okay, what you said is confirmation. I had an older lady come up to me today to ask about those because she wasn't having peace about her daughter running with some of the beliefs that she was gaining from the extra biblical texts. And so I'm glad that I gave her peace. Maybe I can tell this story another time. Another thing is that right now I'm able to read Hebrew phonetically, which really excites me. And I'm learning Hebrew diacritics. I'm learning to read the Tanakh in the original language. And even despite doing that, the Messiah is coming to life more and more for me, not less and less. Now, does this mean that all numinous visions are equal? Absolutely not. What we need to do when we receive a dream from Elohim, or at least we suspect that we have, we need to open up the scriptures and check with them to make sure that there's nothing contradictory with the scriptures about the dream. Now, we know how our Jewish brethren feel about the house of Asaph or Esau. In Eruvin 43b, there's a tractate regarding what should be done in terms of drinking before the day of Messiah and in terms of Eruv, which is putting a rope around the city to permit certain types of burdens outside of one's house or gates. It says in the tractate that once the Messiah comes, all nations will be subservient to the Jewish people, and they will help them prepare whatever is needed for Shabbat. Now, what does Tanakh teach? Tanakh teaches that there will be slavery in the kingdom. And brothers and sisters, I know that there's a lot of emotion surrounding this, so I want to be careful how I word this. However, all the nations will be required to observe the feast days as written in Torah. Now, in some rabbinic circles, this is not every rabbinic circle or every Jewish view. This is not a monolithic viewpoint. I want to make that clear for those of you who are going to be emotional about this. There are certain views suggesting that the carcass of a Gentile does not defile one if they touch it in the same manner that a Jewish or Israelite carcass does, because a Gentile carcass is like that of a cow. It's not necessarily fully human. Now, the book of Numbers, or Bamidbar, in chapter 19 and verse 11, there's a clear commandment from Elohim. How much more clear could it get? It says, Hanogeya Bamet Lakal Nepez Adam Vetame Sibaat Yamim, meaning he who touches the dead of anyone, not just an Israelite, not just someone in the camp, not just someone in the nation, anybody who touches anybody shall be unclean 7 days. Shalom.